Welcome to the Roar Mindset, Leading Through Chaos. I'm Peter Brandenburger, and I help leaders embrace chaos to turn disruption into an advantage. Each episode brings stories and strategies to help you stop fighting disruption, lead with clarity, and thrive in uncertain times. In this episode, I talk with Josh Newman, Vice President at Intel, who led the creation of Project Athena, an industry-wide innovation program that doubled down on what the laptop does best, helping people focus, create, and connect. This work became the foundation for the launch of the Intel Evo brand. Josh's story is a powerful example of leading a disruption inside a complex industry while still facing real uncertainty. He guided an entire ecosystem of partners through that uncertainty, aligning teams across the world and helping build a brand that changed how millions of people work and use their PCs. I had the privilege of working on this effort with Josh, and during this conversation, we explore how clarity emerged from curiosity while putting the PC users in the center. We also talk about the value of a written vision and how it can unite people around a shared direction. I reflect more on these at the end of the episode. Enjoy. Thanks for joining, Josh. Glad to have you on today.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, before we jump in to talk about some of the great activities that you have led and I've been privileged to be part of, maybe let's start off with getting to know a little bit about you and what matters to you these days.
A little about me. I mean, let's see, 32 years at Intel. I've been, I been in the PC industry that whole 32 years. I grew up loving PCs in the 80s, just fascinated by them. And then I got the privilege to work on them and never really stopped. I mean, what matters to me these days is continuing to see people thrive with PCs and the like. Obviously outside work, there's family. Uh, I have 3 20-year-old boys, and all of them PC users as well. But focus on family, focus on health. Most importantly, I've had interesting journey with my own health, and you appreciate that so much more every day. Once you've seen it at risk, it's so important. So it's that combination of doing the work of purpose that I still feel like I do, creating amazing PCs to enrich people's lives, and then, of course, friends, family, and trying to enjoy as much as I can.
Yeah, I love the balance with health too. And the reflection that you may not be quite aware of it until it's at risk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Well, great. So for those who don't know Josh and my relationship, so we worked together at Intel. We worked on a brand called Evo. So that's one of the things I want to focus on. So maybe you can just start off with why did Evo begin? What was happening in the world? And why did you see it as something necessary to go do?
Yeah, happy to. I mean, I mentioned being in the PC industry for 32 years, and it went through several waves. In the 90s, we couldn't build them fast enough. There was, everybody was buying PCs. It was an amazing time. The 2000s, it was the shift from desktop to mobile, and you have a lot of exciting things happening in mobile. And at that point, I had the opportunity to go spend a few years working specifically on Wi-Fi products for PCs, and that was exciting. But just seeing that whole shift to mobile and everybody having a laptop, and it becoming a thing. And then in the 2010s, of course, things slowed down for the PC because the smartphone obviously became something people were doing more and more activities on. Social media on the phone was taking people's time and energy. And then the tablet, the interesting idea that, hey, if we just make a bigger phone, maybe you don't need a PC. And that was,
Uh-huh.
it was an interesting time in the early 2010s. And as we got to the middle of, I'd say, 2015 or so, we were trying things to make the laptops thinner, lighter, longer battery life. We had the program called Ultrabook in the early 2010s, and it was really trying to address the threat of the tablet. We started making 2-in-1s, right, to try to make the PC, imbue it with touch and, more functionality for adapting to the different things you do to hopefully, right, take minutes of use from the phone and the tablet. And that was really the competition we were having. Try to get people to use their PC more than their mobile devices, their phones and their tablets. We
Yeah, I remember
realized, yeah,
that's when the PC was dead. like
Oh,
headlines were
yeah.
coming out.
Well, the PC was dead. There's multiple times that
Yes.
the PC was dead. It was a Mark Twain quote, rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. The
Yes.
PC went through that a few times. It 2017 or so, we were just kind of looking at, I would say the PC market was stable, but then the clarity of where the innovation was going to come from next wasn't obvious. We created Thin, we had created two-in-ones and convertibles. We'd added touch, but it wasn't clear what the next big innovation was going to be to try to keep people interested in PCs or refreshing their PCs. And we set out to do some research about what people use their PCs for. And when do they go to their phone? When do they go to their PC? And the really big aha in that research was you can't get people to use their phone less, right? And any innovation effort designed to try to take minutes of use away from a person's phone is a fruitless effort. But people were going to their PCs for very specific reasons. When they needed to focus on something, and found these things out by talking to people. We went out in the wild and actually talked to PC users in a few different countries, and a very thorough set of interviews and understanding their day in life. And one of the women I spoke to in this process was, she explained the idea of, she was a graduate student, and she said, I'll use my phone to text with my friends or, to send really quick emails. But, if my professor texts me and I have to do a thoughtful response to my professor and I need it to sound professional, I have to pull my PC up because I have to really think about it. And so when I'm doing something that I know is really important and has to come off professionally, and it's creating the space to think about the response and make sure it's really good. That's what the PC is great for. That's when I always go to the PC rather than try to do it on my phone. And that was just one example. There were more examples like that where we learned that people were going to their PC because it was helped them focus better than they could on the phone. It created like a dedicated space for them to do the work that was most important to them. There were some other examples of other functionality that they liked, but that was the basic idea, is like if I needed to focus or if I needed to create dedicated space and time to do really important work, that's when I go to my PC. And so the beginning of Evo was really this idea that rather than trying to compete for minutes of use from other devices, we needed to double down what the PC was uniquely good at relative to those other devices.
And that was kind of a revolutionary concept of not competing with the phone. I mean, maybe in today's term, it may not be or a little more obvious to folks, but especially within Intel or especially with people who are in the PC industry, they're like, no, it's competition. And the other thing I think that was fairly new is actually going to talk to people and understanding what they really want and how they use their systems.
That's right. The whole idea was putting the user or the person in the middle of what our future innovation plan would be. And that was really fundamentally that was the breakthrough, is put the user-centered approach to this as opposed to the technology-focused approach to innovation. Yeah, and then we called that Project Athena. So the original project name that we actually still use with the industry today was Project Athena. And I actually chose the name because Athena was the goddess of classical learning and wisdom in Greek mythology. And I like those ideas of classical learning and wisdom, but that's what the PC helps you do.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I like that.
But the other point about it too is like you mentioned that they're replacing the phone thing. Like the program we had leading up to that, and it's old history now. We actually had a program called Converge Mobility. And the whole purpose of the program was to create a PC that could fold up small enough that it could be your everything device, as opposed to and it was just the complexity associated with building something like that. Would make sure that, it was sort of a jack of all trades, master of none problem. Right. And so this is another reason, like the Project Athena focus was so groundbreaking, is when you really went to where users were and what they needed and why they value the PC. It changes your approach to how you're going to innovate from there.
How did you get into a leadership position for Project Athena? Like, what was the scenario, and I guess what were you thinking right before you stepped in front of this thing?
Yeah, I was in a position where I was leading the, what we call the on-the-go laptop business. So the non-gaming laptops maybe is a better way to say it. The Intel leadership at the time had said, hey, feedback we're getting from our industry partners is they don't see a clear innovation future from Intel, like a clarity of what that vision looks like. So, Josh, please go create one, right? And we went down this path of I pulled in my insights team. We had this brilliant idea to pull on a third party firm to get a really good outside in perspective that was really good at doing this. And that's where we got the breadth of the social science approach to go talk to people. It seems so simple, but when you're working every day hard on innovation and industry partnerships, you could sometimes forget to why don't we go talk to the people who we're building the products for in the first place? And there's certainly an expertise that I really, really appreciated in engaging this third party firm. And it turned out we also had a lot of it inside Intel. So what was interesting was once we really wrote down this vision of we're doubling down on what the PC is uniquely good at and what people value it for. There were leaders at Intel in the architecture team, in the manufacturing teams, in our social anthropology teams, in our Intel Labs group, right? Like who I had never met before, but they saw the vision and they were reaching out to me unsolicited and saying, I want to work with you on this. And so it was really cool. The power of a clear vision that's user centered. Engineers, technologists, innovators, scientists, like they want to be involved with it. So it was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And as one of the people that made my way to that team too, it was a wonderful team you created. Thinking back, how did you get this team to be so cohesive? Because we were very cohesive, I believe, and contributed and engaged, but yet provided different feedback, and there was good discussion, good debate. How did you facilitate this?
Well, yeah, it was pretty interesting. The one thing we did at the beginning of the program is we wrote a vision paper. So the novel thing we did was we took once we had the insights from the people we talked to, and then partnering with the agency we were working with, we wrote, it was about a 5-page vision paper. I actually called it a manifesto, right? It was kind of this was the potential future for the PC manifesto, but it was a white paper. And it was important because I actually remember as we were getting some of the insights in the first place, I remember socializing it with some of our architecture leaders, and they were getting excited. And one of them turned to me and said, this is really good. We really have to write this down in like a white paper, something with full sentences and paragraphs and stuff. And it just wasn't the way we did that. Everything was so PowerPoint and,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
this was, no, let's sit down and write a thoughtful story and vision and in document form. And once we had that and we started socializing it, then along with the presentation and along with the data, it was very easy to get everybody aboard. I remember the first review then back with the Intel leadership team, as we were presenting it out, the head of the client computing group at the time was IMing me on the side about 20 minutes in and going, this is really good. It was, again, it seemingly simple in hindsight, right? But it's because we had a little bit of a small crisis, right? We didn't have a clear vision for our future innovation focus to be leading the industry with. That was the tension, the
Yeah.
problem. And so there was some hunger for a solution, but then just the simple idea of talking to people, talking to the customers, really understanding how the product's used and where it's valued and then where its shortcomings are, what they would and not just its shortcomings, but what they wish it could be in the future. Like that was also in their feedback. So in the vision paper, each section around the key tenets of what the future PC needed to be, which was something that there were 3 tenets: a device that helped you focus at your best, a device that adapted to the various roles that people play throughout the day, and a device that was always ready. All right. And those 3 tenets were kind of the summary of what came from all of the research, all of the primary research. We talked about what it meant to to help focus. We talked about what it meant to help adapt to people's work. But you ended each section with a paragraph of, imagine if your PC could. Right.
Mm.
And that's where we got into, like, we had no idea how to do it, but we got just based on the interviews, we got into the, imagine if your PC would, as you went from your workplace to your home, completely shifted what the experience looked like because it know you were shifting from work to play or work to life. Imagine if your PC was, you never had to worry about connectivity, or imagine if you never had to carry a charger around with you again. Right? These were the ideas behind Always Ready. Instead of saying, here's what we can do next year, it was painting the, wow, those would be amazing. Now let's figure out how to go work with the whole industry to go toward those
Yeah.
amazing statements.
I
Right.
think setting, I mean, you said that you didn't know how to do it. And I think that's the brilliance of this. It's just like setting, like what Jim Collins calls a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, like no idea how to go get it and go after it. And then people can rally to reach that in probably ways that you didn't have to directly manage. In other words, you didn't have to say, "Hey, do this," and like piece it all together. Like they're all kind of heading to that vision direction.
Yeah, that's right. And so doing, it was compelling to the industry as we started rolling it out to the industry, and we said what we're going to do with it, which became the Project Athena Innovation Program, which we really started bringing out in 2018. We said we have a clear vision for what the PC has to be in the future. This is why people go to their PCs today. Therefore, this is how we have to innovate the PC for the future. The PC industry is a complicated ecosystem, and everybody has their own needs and visions and business models and the like. So it can be challenging to bring everybody on a common vision. People couldn't argue with what the vision was because it was user-centered, founded on user input, and all about making PCs better for what people want them to be better at.
Yeah, and through my career, I had a lot of challenges with getting alignment across industry. And so, for those who aren't familiar, there's the actual brands that you buy the PCs from. There's people who design and make it. There's all the supply chain underneath. There's the marketing, the retailers, and trying to get them all aligned to a common thing. What really means is, do they all have a way of making money? I mean, is it a win-win-win up the chain? Like that vision really helped set that. And yeah, I think a lot of the challenges or questions were really just, okay, how do we do this? Not
Yeah,
should we do it?
yeah, that's
And
right.
what level and so forth. I'm curious, as you wrote the vision, how much of that clarity did you have before or like through the process of writing it and talking with people about the vision?
I would say going in, I didn't know when we started this project with the agency and with our insights team, we didn't know what we were going to find. Right. Like I said, we were still focused on a technology driven approach to the threat of the phone, stealing people's attention away from PCs. And so we were very deep in we just got to go figure out how to be something that could be your phone and your PC. Right.
Mhm.
Like, that was the path. So I didn't know what we were going to find going in. I think the clarity of the sort of people-led insights and that idea that there's a reason people go to their PCs, make it better at that, just that then changed everything. So that like changed how I focused, how I worked with partners on the notion of how we think about the PC going forward for the future. And then the interesting thing that came out of that a little bit after we wrote the white paper, there's a social scientist, PhD at Intel at the time, who had done a lot of research in her academic career on what she called the intimacy of work. In fact, I think her first publication was called Work's Intimacy. And it was this idea of like, as the laptop became big in the 2000s, how people were bringing their work to bed with them.
Mm.
It was like the lines had blurred so much. And she had recently started getting very interested in this new line of workers as gig work was becoming popular in the late 2010s. And this whole idea that freelancers were growing like crazy. Like people were leaving the secure corporate jobs to go freelance, whether voluntarily or involuntarily.
Mhm.
People were, uh, the freelance community was growing in the professional segment. And the interesting data point was even for those who had entered the freelance market involuntarily, in other words, got laid off right? Um, when you interviewed, the majority of them said they would never go back to a corporate
Uh,
environment, that they preferred the freelance. And at the time, mind you, this is 2018. We started to then research the freelancers and see how do the freelancers jibe with what we had interviewed. And there was a really good compatibility between our original consumer insights and this growing class of freelancers. They were using tools like Zoom and Slack before people really heard of Zoom and Slack, but they were using them at a much higher rate than anybody else on their laptop.
uh,
So this idea of this always connectedness, this constant synchronous communication via chat with file sharing, and then of course video conferencing. And so that sort of got us into, hey, there is this emerging usage that's an interesting thing to architect around, because this is again what a PC can be uniquely good at. It's the big screen, so you have the real estate to be able to talk to someone on Zoom while working through files on Slack and collaborating on the Google Suite, between collab docs, even before Microsoft 365 and OneDrive became the common mode of
uh,
collaborating. So we were digging deep into that. And so that was also helping reinforce why people believed in the vision we were on, as we had this great story about freelancers. Now, a growing part of the economy, and more people were going to need the PC to do more things for them than it had in the past for these very focused scenarios. Then, of course, COVID happened,
yeah.
and we all started operating like
So
that.
we all became freelancers of some, yeah,
So that, I mean, I don't mean to be tongue in cheek about it, but that helped even further reinforce our vision. So, some of it was like, it's the research and then the community that got connected to the research and the vision to help us bring the freelancer story into it. And of course, a world event that was out of our control. But all those things actually reinforced that this was the innovation path, and continued to bring the industry to it. So, it's interesting. Now, I'm not saying like this wouldn't have taken off the same way if COVID didn't happen, because I do think the freelancer community still, even to this day, is growing,
yeah.
but it
Well,
just
I'm
accelerated
one
it.
of them. I mean,
Right.
I'd never thought about it. I don't term myself a freelancer, but yes, that's what I am doing, and
Yeah.
I am using an Evo system, and I
Yeah.
use Zoom and Slack a lot,
Yeah.
and all the things that you talked about is something I guess I didn't even have a connection that my working on Evo actually helping me now on the other side.
Yeah. That's right.
But also from a COVID, the way I look at COVID is it helped validate what I think we knew. Like I felt I could do remote work very effectively because, as you know, I was working with a lot of people offshore in India and Taiwan, China, Israel, and all over the place. So we were working remotely anyway, but from a different perspective. There's obviously the downside of COVID, but the benefit of COVID is it helped prove this model out and really show people that it's possible.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. So I think coming back to like, how would that, if I had it to do again, like what were the key learnings from that is, there was the initial research and a really clearly articulated vision that got an expanded community focused on the vision and testing the vision and trying the vision. But then also, like, it made a connection to that other social scientist at Intel, right? That, she came to me, like I said, and said, I like this. I could have helped you with this earlier. I wish I knew you were doing this, but here's all this stuff that I do. Let's talk about freelancers. And so there's that idea of like I think the Stephen Johnson quote of about innovation is, it's not like one eureka moment. It's about connected minds. As I suppose chance favors the connected mind. So that's exactly what it was. It was like having the vision clearly articulated, then created this network of connectivity to even more people with innovative and good ideas, or tons of insights and data, or just brilliance of some of the people I got to work through this. And so it's like that's what I try to do now, as we say, next time we're going on an initiative like this, how do you create those connections? That should be one of the goals of starting a big innovation program like this, is how do you get it so that you're not tunnel vision focused on the one thing you believe in, but you're creating an environment for more connection of smart people with smart ideas to connect to, and then build on.
Yeah, and I guess to clarify for others, I believe you mean in connection not just within Intel or not even within the team, but it's the team across Intel, but across the industry in this case.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of our big customers, the leader of their consumer PC division at the time, really loved the white paper and the vision. And so then we had a even strong connection with that customer, also helping to feed into what we were going to do. All of them believed in it, but there was one who was just so passionate about it that he became a big contributor for the industry. Right. That was the really interesting thing is you would think that an individual customer is going to want to protect their ideas for themselves, but he saw the possibility of the growth of the PC in general that he was contributing back to us to give to the industry, which was pretty cool. I mean, that's a really high bar to hold. I don't know that you can
Yeah.
achieve something like that every time, but
Well, and I think that concept is not very obvious, or at least wasn't obvious to me. And I was sitting in the middle of it, which is why would everybody want to build the same type of PC as their competitors, the different brands building the same thing? Can you talk about how like an industry-wide effort actually helps float all boats and how it's not, negative to bring a alliance or a
yeah,
common mindset or a
yeah,
common vision in this case?
yeah. So this gets into the transition of where the Intel Evo part of it comes in, which is, the first 2 years of it was the Project Athena innovation program. It was getting the industry aligned on a vision, the specs, the hardware and software specifications to pay off that vision. And when I say pay off that vision, it's, we needed camera vendors to do different kinds of work. In 2018, most laptops shipped with like a pretty cheap 1 megapixel front facing camera because almost nobody ever used them. It was a grainy experience, terrible in low light, not very useful for the way we do video conferencing today. But, getting the industry, the 5 to 7 or so suppliers that build these cameras and the camera subsystems to figure out how we were going to get much better camera quality, but still make it so that it made sense in the economics of a PC, right? So you couldn't raise the camera system there's a 50 to 100 examples of, types of companies like that had to be brought along on this to accelerate their innovation in their specific area of the PC. So lots of work going into this. Now the question is, I'm delivering this to the vision. How is this going to impact the business? How am I going to make more money off of this or get more share or drive more revenue, whatever? And the idea is we needed to be able to help consumers find these designs that met this higher standard now, that included these new level of innovation, hardware, software. And so the Intel Evo badge was created to be it was the brand. It basically replaced our processor brand at the time, right? For the first couple of generations. So you knew if you had the Intel Evo sticker on the PC, that it was one of those that has held to this higher standard to meet the vision that was inspired by the users that we talked to. Now, the benefit of that was at a time when the PC market was kind of stable, maybe slightly down, this was something new.
Mm,
This is a chance to get people interested in thinking about refreshing their PC again, to say there's something meaningful, there's something new. And especially on the Windows side, there's something that's as good as what Apple's offering,
yeah.
right? And that was an important distinction as well, because we could tell that interestingly enough, like the MacBook kind of owned this space for independent professionals, especially creative professionals. And the things that it was appreciated for was really good at Slack and Zoom because they actually did have better cameras and they thought about the same type of customers that we were talking to here. And so that idea of having Evo and a story behind it to talk about that's powered and inspired by the same kind of users that Mac sells to. And by the way, when we did the initial research, we actually recruited MacBook customers as well as Windows PC customers so we can get the broader view of what people
Yeah.
wanted. So that sort of helps the whole industry say, this is how I can benefit from it because it's going to pull people back to the market. It's going to deliver something to them that's meaningful in their lives. And therefore, there should be some value we're all creating together for customers.
And I guess how much of this, when you started the program with Project Athena, and then the Evo. How much was this was all planned out? And I guess if you look at the entire program, do you have an estimate of how much was planned versus kind of you had to lead through when it happened?
Yeah, it was, I'd say when we started Project Athena, it was all about the industry innovation program. How do we move the industry toward a better vision for the PC? The idea of branding it Intel Evo came later when we realized that we could really go build much better PCs here, but we would have to go help consumers find that value in a very complicated ecosystem where there's tens of OEM brands and there's uh, just different retailers, different paths, routes to market for the consumers to find PCs. Like, how do you help them in their decision process to know if they really want the best PC for higher ed student or freelancing or their specific needs? That Evo was the choice. So that's where we decided we had to have a little more rigor in the program, the spec and the branding program together with then the marketing promotion to explain what it was. All right, that it's a different sort of construction of a PC than in the past. There's a lot more thought put into delivery of these overall experiences to help people focus, adapt to their roles, and be always ready.
Yeah. And what kind of disruptions or setbacks, challenges came your way? And I guess how did you deal with that leading this program?
Yeah, I would say that probably the biggest challenges were the complication that I don't mean in a bad way, it's a complicated industry. What makes the open ecosystem great is that it's open and you get a lot of people innovating. And so you get a lot of innovation happen subsequently. What makes it challenging is that everybody in that ecosystem also is in business. And there's specific things that they are constrained by, their supply chain agreements, their own profitability. It's you're working with companies, a lot of them publicly traded, and everybody has to make economic sense for everybody to be involved. So, we would see things like a high level alignment on the vision toward a specific laptop model, but then there'd be variations of that model that use different components in the supply chain to hit different cost points, and the experience would be, widely different between, two versions of the same model.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so, trying to make sure we were aligning the Evo story and the badge to that, not just the design, but the very specific construction of its design. Yes, that was a challenge we actually continued to work with. It wasn't there was no sort of slam dunk solution for that, more than just working closely with the customers and trying to meet them where they were as well. Because part of our role in this is, yes, drive the innovation and have a clear vision of how to create better products for customers, but the ecosystem also has to be healthy. Continuing to balance that and listen to every player in the ecosystem and figure out how we could solve that problem and optimize between, the economic health of the business for everyone involved, but also delivering the better overall experience at the end. So it was just a lot of really close work to figure out how to make some of those trades and balance the two.
Yeah, I remember there's
So
a
that's
lot
probably
of
the biggest
data.
challenge.
Yeah, I remember getting the data for that and like really just sometimes just simply highlighting this back to the people, like this component versus this component or night and day compared to how you're trying to deliver this experience. And are you even aware of it? And a lot of times they're like, no, we thought these specs mattered. And so it's just how they turn their specs into full end user experience. And I
Yeah,
think
that's right.
that connection really helped convince people or not convince people. It just showed them what they needed to do.
Yeah, that's right. And we had to be thoughtfully incremental toward hitting the vision. And that kind of goes back to when the white paper or the vision paper said, imagine your PC can do X. We had to break it down into manageable chunks each year. Because, it'd be easy to, not easy, but you could build the thing right away and have it cost $27,000 per year. That's not going to be a useful product for anybody either. So we had to make it manageable. Like when you have, for example, if you had a display vendor innovating to bring OLED into a certain thickness so you could have a beautiful, rich display experience to focus on and not hurt your eyes. and also deliver a long battery life. But the technology in the first year is complicated and costs a lot and isn't at economies of scale yet. Right. So thinking about how do you introduce that, but understand that it's not going to be the thing that's going to be in every PC in year one. What's the 5-year plan to get there? And so there's a good example where it's not an accident that you see a lot of PCs, even down to $699, $700 kind of price points, where OLED is just a given now. Right.
Yeah.
And the battery life is pretty good on those, because the first OLED laptops, the battery life was like a third of what their LCD counterparts would have been, because the power draw was so different. And now that's not the case anymore. And that's what I'm proud of, is that it took a while, but we kept at it as an industry, all aligned toward that same vision to make that work over time. So patience is also kind of important for some
Mm.
of this, which is hard. But if you truly want to innovate toward an end vision, at least having the vision will help you understand that the patience is worth it.
Yeah, it's kind of the long game. I mean, it's maybe not super long, but several years at Intel seems like a fairly long game kind of horizon.
Yes. Yeah. But that's where having a unifying vision really helps you rationalize staying patient for the long game.
Yeah. So what's next? Where does this evolve for you and your leadership next?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually back doing a similar leadership role that I was doing when I first was working on Project Athena. The scope's a little bigger. It's across, all consumer platforms at Intel, PC platforms. So that's exciting for me. I've been spending more time learning the gaming market as well than I ever have. And as, by the way, when you talk about people go to their PC to focus, that's true for gamers as well, right? The reason they want to play PC games is a set space to get immersed in a game. That's focus. So it's not always about work.
Well, all three of my sons are a testament to that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But I think obviously the big revolution that's happening to everything in the world right now is AI. And I'm pretty interested in looking at how AI is changing what people are doing and what people want to do with AI. And I don't think we know that yet. Right? I mean, you could probably map out, 20 different potential futures for what the world will look like about how people behave with all of the AI tools available to them. And so thinking through some of that is exciting, and probably getting back into really talking to customers again and understanding how AI is changing or may change what they do. But that notion of continuing to double down on what the PC is uniquely good at is how I will continue to lead the team, because it's just understanding, like, how are people's behavior changing? What do they want to do differently that they didn't do yesterday with the evolution of something like AI? But then make sure we can articulate that. And the PC is really good at that for these specific parts of it, because of what the PC's unique attributes of a large screen, multimodal inputs and outputs, style and sleekness go in there too, something people are proud to carry around. So all this, marrying up that, like, the PC's role because it's the PC, and then make sure that we're understanding what people want to be doing, and then telling the PC's role within that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of exciting. I mean, like, one example, I've been looking at all of the AI companies that are now creating their own browsers, right? This is a very potentially disruptive time in sort of long-standing applications,
Hmm.
or where people spend their time on the PC. That could be very disruptive in the next few years because of, all of the innovation going in around which AI models or which AI services people want to be using. And as an example, for people who are commonly using Chrome, maybe 5 years from now, there's like 5 different browsers to think about, and how do they all work together? How, it's, you're gonna have 4 different models loaded locally. How are those models training each other for your personal needs? Like, all of these questions are fascinating to think about. It's going to be great to learn about in the next few years as people adapt, right, these into their lives. And then I'm just looking forward to making sure we make the PC, continually be the best, place to go to do important parts of that.
Yeah, and then, like, experimenting with it. The other thing that came up when you were talking about AI and actually going to talking to people about who you are serving in this case, or the end users, Tara Moore uses this concept called the whiteboard and like getting off of the whiteboard and actually getting into the world. And to me, what I'm talking a lot more to clients about is, hey, stop talking to your AI and start talking to people, like either your customers, your suppliers, your employees. Go have it with the real world. I mean, it's good to get prepared, but at some point you got to get out into the real world.
That's right. But I also think that's going to be a very changing conversation over the next 3 or 4 years too, because there's just the rate of change in what, AI can do for people is, probably faster than anything I've seen yet in my
Mm.
32 years in the
Oh yeah.
PC industry, right? So it's also gonna be this is gonna be a case where, like, talk to people, no question, but we'll probably have to do it a lot and somewhat continuously to see what the trends will actually be. There's so much noise about what the trends are, and so I think it's gonna be talking to people a lot more.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not in its trends. It's not like it's going to be one thing. What other learnings are you taking out of Project Athena and Evo work that you're applying to the future? I mean, you talked about vision and connectedness, but are there others that you've, like, if you were to do it again, what you might do differently or that will take and apply to the future?
Yeah, I think, when we did a Project Athena the first time around, we were very focused at first on Intel leading, the charge. I think as we got into it, we found there really was this connected landscape of people who wanted to do this together. So I would probably think about, who's the coalition at the beginning to try to do this with and see if we can even force multiply it as you develop the vision.
Hmm.
That's probably one. There was definitely value in taking responsibility to try to help the entire PC ecosystem. But there was probably some things where, had we had some partners with us at the very beginning, we could have gone faster, maybe. So it's kind of looking at some of those optimizations. Could we have tuned up the machine a little bit if we had done a few things versus, bringing people along later? Nothing major. I think the key thing is be user centered, put the user in the middle, put the customer in the middle of everything we do, which is hard to do, but that's the big one is put the customer in the middle. And I would definitely use the white paper format versus the PowerPoint format again. And,
Hmm.
make sure because the level of connectedness that people who just came to me and said, let me help you. I don't remember ever having to ask for a resource. It was people who wanted to work on this program. And one thing I know, I'm an engineering background myself. Look, engineers, technologists, scientists, they want to work on cool things,
Hmm.
right? They want to work on things that will change people's lives or change the world. And that's exciting. So I think it's also making sure you embody that as much as you can into the vision of how it has impact on society.
Yeah, that's wonderful. All right. I guess as we wrap up, I have one question, which is, what's one word that describes your leadership mindset right now?
Curious.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely curious. And it goes to what we just said about AI, right? I don't know, right? We can all read the trends and the articles every day, most of them generated by AI, but we don't know. I'm really curious. I watch how my kids embrace ChatGPT during COVID when it hit a couple years ago. I start to watch how more and more, maybe less tech engaged people are turning to it, but we don't know where it's really going to go and where it could go. Certainly know what the technology could enable in time, and it's really fascinating stuff. But so just being curious of how will people use it? How will it change how we work, how we play, how we connect? I just constantly want to not assume I know and just be curious and then bring that to my teams to make sure that they're doing the same, that we're not supposing answers, that we're asking questions.
Yeah, I like that. Checking your assumptions and being curious about it. Yeah. Well, thank you, Josh, for joining today. It was great to catch up and see you again. And I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Yeah, all right, Peter. Thanks so much for having me. It's a lot of fun.
All right. Thank you. As I reflect on the conversation with Josh, three themes emerge for me. First, the major innovations do not begin with certainty. They begin by stepping into a new space with curiosity, asking questions, and yes, listening. Continue to listen. Second, Even when you lead an industry-wide initiative to disrupt that industry, you still have uncertainty. You can't control it all, and this is more proof that control is a fallacy. And last, a vision is powerful because it invites people to build it. A vision doesn't predict the future or tell people how to make it. It pulls people in to join and engage in making it happen. That's powerful leadership. Thanks for listening to Roar Mindset, Leading Through Chaos. Disruption isn't going away, but you can embrace it and turn it into an advantage. Until next time, stop fighting disruption, lead with clarity, and thrive in uncertain times.